Is island hopping as easy as it sounds? Not from our experience in Greece.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Thank you for tuning into the Travel FOMO podcast. I'm your co-host, Jamin Houghton, and with me, as always, is my wife and fairy friend, Hillary.
Fairy friend. It sounds funner than it is.
It does sound more fun than it is.
Right.
But we are in season 7 of the Travel FOMO podcast, Mediterranean Europe, and we are smack dab in the middle of the Mediterranean this week. We are island hopping in Greece.
Yes. And closing the gap on our time in Europe.
Yes.
These last few episodes start to wrap up Europe.
So, Greek islands, were they your number one target for things to do on gap year?
They were pretty high on the list. Yeah.
I mean, I think there were other like individual activities maybe that you really had circled, but I feel like destination wise, Greek islands were your must do.
Such a big deal to me. I love being able to be in the sunshine, to relax, to be on the ocean. All of that like checked a lot of boxes for me. And yeah, I mean, I'd seen a lot of, Mamma Mia and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. And I'm joking, but not.
Yeah.
Because like the first time you start to see some of those, you're like, that is beautiful. Where is that? And you start like clicking around and realizing, oh, okay, that's a real place and that's on my list.
Well, amazing. I remember you talking about wanting to go to Greece like back when we were dating.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I bought you like a book about Greece, like very early on in our relationship.
Yeah. In fact, we took it with us. I put it in my backpack so I could read it along the way. I'm pretty sure I took it, like it was like on Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it all the way to England and I realized I can't take this much further. It was like a coffee table kind of book.
Yeah.
It was huge with huge pictures. But I was like, I'm going to absorb everything I can while we're on the plane. And then I'll like leave it along the way. And I ended up leaving it in like our first hotel. But I was able to absorb some information from it. And I looked through that book for a long time.
Yeah. So you finally got to go to the Greek islands.
Finally got to go. And today we're talking all about it. And we're starting out with an island I never dreamed of going to. It wasn't on my list. But the more we did our research, it really felt like the right place to be because it's a relatively large island. So it's easy to get to. And that was important for it to be easy and then for it to be easy to access other islands. So that was important. But also it has small town vibes, and that was important to me. And so we landed on Paros as our home base, I guess you could say.
Yes.
And Paros, it looks a lot like Paris, but with an O.
Correct. And we were going to island hop all throughout the Greek islands with Paros as our base. And so that's where we were headed first. And it took a little effort to get there.
Yeah, we were leaving Athens. And, first of all, getting to the train station in Athens from our Airbnb was like a little sketchy. There's so much graffiti in Athens and it feels really rough. But it really never was. We never saw anything that actually made us worried.
No, yeah. I felt safe the whole time.
Yeah.
And we did have to walk kind of a long ways because we were kind of in the same situation we were in Rome, where we wanted to use our Eurail pass to get us from Athens city to the port where we could catch our ferry. And our Eurail pass didn't cover the metro. system.
Right.
So we had to walk to a proper train station,
Right.
which meant a little
A
more,
little further.
yeah, a little more navigating the city on foot.
Yeah. But it wasn't too crazy.
No, not at all.
Especially after all the mileage we'd been putting in. We get on the train. We missed the first train and had to catch the next train, which was like 20 minutes later. So we are getting a late start. Then we get there and we're at the port, and we literally see this port and we're like, oh my gosh, we've totally underestimated this. This port is huge.
Massive.
Think like cruise ships, a port for cruise ships, not a port for like little boats.
Right.
This is not like Lake Como ferries. These are like massive, massive ferries.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So then we're walking around this port that is just so hard to find anything, so hard to find the different lines, the different options. And it's crazy because there are lots of options, but you have to go half a mile down the road to like go to this ticket booth for one line. And then if they don't have a ticket for you, you have to like go another half mile maybe to a different ferry line to get a ticket from them, and you could very well just miss your ferry.
Yeah, I have to say I expected to walk up and there be a ticket counter where you could buy tickets to anywhere and then they would point you off to your boat. But like you were saying, no, there's a ticket counter for every single one and they're just all spread out. And you can't really tell. There's no centralized place with information for you to know, okay, I need to go here for this and there for that. You just kind of have to wander around and find it.
Yeah. The reason that we didn't book things online was because we wanted to use our Eurail pass because it was supposed to be good with some ferries, and we'd looked into which ferries and we were going to use it, but we needed to be physically present to be able to use that pass. Oh my goodness. It is very difficult to use Eurail passes in some situations, and this is one of them.
Yes.
So we ended up not even using the pass, which was like so annoying.
It really was. Like we had kind of based our whole day on being able to use it and ended up just having to punt on it. Was a little frustrating.
Yeah. I think we spent like $76 per person, and we just ended up getting on a different line because by the time we were missing one ferry, and by the time we'd gotten to the other ticket booth to get the other Eurail friendly discount, it would have been too late anyway. So we're like, whatever, we had to buy business class.
Yeah. They were mostly sold out. They only had business class left. So that was one reason behind the $76 per person. But we ended up getting really nice seats out of it.
We did. We liked it. And if you think about it, it's kind of like flying. Like you're spending several hours on this ship. And so for us, it was a 3-hour ride to Paros. Mm-hmm. So, hey, okay, I'll take a really nice seat.
Definitely really nice, comfortable seats in an air-conditioned room, a huge air-conditioned room with a bar and like little places where you could go buy snacks and things like that. So that part of it was really nice. And something that kind of caught us by surprise too, we bought tickets for a ferry that was leaving like an hour later. And I think we both anticipated just having to like stand around on the docks for an hour waiting.
Right.
But we went to where our boat was. Our boat was there because it was the first run of this leg of the ferry. And so we were able to actually board right then and there and hang out in our seats for an hour.
Yes, for an hour. So nice. So note to other travelers, if you have the opportunity, buy your ferry ticket, buy a ferry ride that is really early in the morning because it's more likely to be on time. Mm-hmm. Because as they continue to travel, for some reason, it's harder to calculate the time. I guess with the ocean and the winds and stuff like that, like it's not a definite science like it would be maybe on a train. But so they never quite calculate it, and it just gets a little later throughout the day. So try to book your ferry in the morning if that works for you. And secondly, I forgot my second point. Jamo, what's my second point?
I'm not sure. Book your first ferry out so that that'll be on time, and you can show up early to it.
Yes, that was my second point. See, we are ferry buddies. What did you
Ferry
say?
friends.
Ferry friends. Oh Lord.
It's like a cheap version of Care Bears or something.
Do you remember getting on board and being a part of a lot of drama? Or
yes.
being present for a lot of drama?
Yeah, there was a Karen in front of us.
Yes. And we're filming and I'm talking to the camera, and then somebody comes and they kind of push you out of the way a little bit, and so you're moving as they're trying to get into their seats. But then also there's this lady who's basically she's this English woman who is livid because when she boarded, they told her ticket, she could sit anywhere. And so she actually walked into business class, the nicest class of all, and decided she could sit anywhere in business class. And I think, what they were trying to say is you're in the right section, you can sit anywhere in this section.
Yeah.
And she would, and they came back and they corrected her and they're like, sorry, that's not, no, this man really does have a ticket for this specific seat. And she was like, but y'all said. And they're like, we misspoke. We're so sorry. That's not true. And she's like, but you said. Oh, and she was loud.
Yes. Yeah, that was pretty exceptional. And they are the general admission part of the boat. It is first come, first serve seating. But this lady just walked into business class and walked right up to the front, the very front, window view seats that are the most expensive seats on the boat, and just thought that she should get them. And then when it's clearly you misunderstood what was being told to you kind of situation, that she was like, well, but you said. And I don't know. I just have very little tolerance for grown adults throwing little fits about something when they're clearly in the wrong. And she was fighting with the people whose seats it were, and then fighting with the people on the boat, and just a miserable person.
Fortunately, she didn't actually sit by us because somebody else actually had the tickets there.
Yeah, they prevailed, and Kieran had to go back to her seats.
So arriving to Paros was incredible. I will say, if you are taking a ferry, you should definitely make sure you're awake for the time you arrive to your little island.
Yeah.
Because it is such an experience to get to see the ferry approach the island, and to see it come into view, and you start getting really close to the hills around you and the landscape. And so that was really kind of got to be a little exciting. And the port itself, the Paros port, was really crazy.
It was
a little madness, especially for really, I felt like a small village.
Yes. I feel like the ferry system, they, like we talked about, they get late and later I feel like ferries it's everybody's first day. We've never done this before.
Yes.
We have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're just going to come and we're going to open these gates on this boat, and people are going to start walking off with their bags, and people are going to start driving their cars off of this thing.
All at the same time.
And it's just going to be a stampede.
That is exactly what it was like when they let down the big ramp that allows everyone. That blew my mind, that they're like, oh yeah, this is how you get on and off the boat. You just walk onto this giant ramp that they use for trucks and vehicles and everything else, and that's also how humans board.
Yes.
That to me was really funny. But then also the fact that whenever you go to get off, they herd you off with all the vehicles at the same time, and you're just thinking somebody is going to get hurt here.
Yeah. The just chaos. It's just 100% chaos.
Yeah. Well, and our Airbnb host was like, let me pick you guys up. It gets really crazy. Let me pick you guys up. I'll pick you up at the windmill. That was like his only directions.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to find him? I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, like, how is this possible? Like, do you need to know what I'm wearing? I'm just thinking all these things. And lo and behold, amidst all this chaos, we find this guy in his vehicle by the windmill, like in this chaos of all these other vehicles. I don't even remember exactly how it happened, but it was just kind of like, oh yeah, sure enough, all you have to do is just meet by the windmill.
Yeah.
There's one windmill.
I think he did tell us like what kind of car he had.
Probably,
and,
yes.
And that's how we like waved him down.
Yeah.
But I was with you. I was like, should we be like holding a rose while dressed as a rose and playing the song Kissed by a Rose from Seal, and that way you'll know it's us. But we just flagged him down, and then he took us, which we could have easily walked. Like it's a small city, and
yeah,
it wasn't far of the Airbnb, but it was super nice of him to pick us up. He pointed out the grocery store to us and things like that on our way to the Airbnb. So it was super nice of him to pick us up.
It really was. And the town itself is so humble.
Yeah.
I really like that about it. It felt humble and authentic. And I think that's one of the reasons why we loved Paros so much.
Yes, it was very unpretentious.
Yes.
Just a sleepy little fishing village, and that everybody was super nice in, and you just wanted to hang out there.
Yeah.
And just settle in and just be there.
And it also felt like we were the only Americans, with the exception of being at port sometimes. It mostly felt like we were the only Americans there.
Yeah, it definitely was not crowded and overrun with tourists. It was really nice. And we had an amazing Airbnb. It was one of the classic.
So cool. Yeah,
one of the classic white cyclotic houses. It had an amazing, I guess you would call it porch on it area. And it was the second level of this building. So the porch was up kind of high. You could see the ocean, and it was very comfortable and neat and clean on the inside. Had a nice kitchen, a big living room, big bedroom.
Yeah. It was a short walk to the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved
very
being
close.
able to see the ocean. It was so nice to be able to sit outside and eat Greek yogurt. And I was working on editing some videos and podcasts, and I would like sit out there on my laptop and like view the ocean. It was, oh man, I really, really liked that place a lot, for sure.
Well, and it was right next to, you remember it was right next to that little church. Like there was one of those little Greek churches there with like the little dome and everything.
The little blue dome, and so tiny. So tiny. Well, and these little Greek churches are everywhere. And like on the island of Mykonos, there are 600 to 800 churches.
That's just insane.
So wild. And one of the taxi drivers we talked to informed us that is because it's actually tradition for families to have their own church. So there's literally one for every family, and that is intentional. And it's part of tradition on the Paros Island that it really does dictate that every family, if possible, they should found and maintain to their family's name a small church that's dedicated to a specific saint, which is really different.
Yeah.
And it makes for really tiny churches because they don't need to be big. They just need to be like large enough for their family and live on their own property, I guess. It's what I read, I believe.
Yeah. And that's really cool to see, to know that explanation for all of the little churches. And we even were told that people will get buried, people will die and be buried, and then years later their family will go back and dig up their bones and take their bones and put them inside of the little family churches. And so that's also where all of their families are essentially buried for the long term, which makes them really cool and special too.
For sure. If you're listening to this, you like a good adventure. And if you like a good adventure, you might enjoy following the fights. It all started with Mars and Ashley's bold decision to travel full-time in their converted Sprinter van. Fast forward 6 years or so, they've seen all 50 states and backpack countries like Thailand and Guatemala. It's been one daring decision after another, and now they're braving another big adventure, building a creative retreat in the Colorado Rockies. Find out what life is like when you take risk. Follow the fights on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So that night we really started researching the ferries to Santorini because the original plan had been we're going to go spend a day in Santorini and ferry back that night and kind of save some cost because we wouldn't have to actually stay on the island of Santorini. I'd heard a lot of things about how overpopulated it was with tourists and stuff, and that you really just kind of want to get to see it, and that's enough.
Right.
So that was really the plan. And as we start looking into it, we realized that was going to be a really hard day trip because there aren't a lot of ferries and they don't come very frequently. And we were going to have to get back at like 3 a.m. or like all these crazy times or stay for just a couple hours and like hop on another ferry and leave. And so we scheduled a really tight trip. And then like, lo and behold, like a few hours later, it felt like maybe the next morning, one of the ferries gets moved. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to really look impossible. And I'm just thinking, this is either going to cost us a fortune and it's not going to be worth it, or we're going to absolutely regret that we didn't figure this out and make it happen.
Right.
So we were and you really left it up to me. You're like, I'm okay with whatever because I know Santorini is so important to you to get to see. It's really his bucket list stuff. So we made the rare decision that we were going to book another ferry. We didn't know if we'd get our money back or anything.
Yeah.
But what was it? It was like the ferries were so unreliable. They'd changed our ferry time by like 7 hours.
Yes.
So we were going to leave Santorini. We were going to arrive to Santorini in the morning and leave at 5:15 in the evening, which was going to work out great. But then they moved that trip back, that return ferry. They moved it up to like 10:15.
Right. So our return ferry was going to leave before we even got there.
Yes. It was like, and you're just thinking, surely someone working in the system can see what it looks like when you book a return flight. And you know that, like, you can't book me a return flight that's, like, when I'm not physically there.
Right.
Oh, but that's not how their system worked. Oh, my goodness. That was wild.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And we ended up deciding, like, well, we'll just stay the night in Santorini.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we solved it. And we were able to find accommodation. Well, we'll save that for next week.
That's right. We'll just give you a little taste of it, it was an incredible standalone home with a plunge pool in a really, really private side of the island.
Yeah.
Of Santorini.
And Santorini do you think it's the most beautiful place that we went?
One of the most, yeah.
Yeah.
It's right up there with Switzerland in my mind.
Yeah.
And Amalfi Coast.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Yeah. It's so, the cliffs are so steep, and I wasn't prepared for that. That surprised me because I knew it was beautiful, but I thought it was beautiful because you've got blue water and white homes. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen a lot of those photos, but I'd never really seen the depth of it all. And then when you arrive and you see the depth of, like, you see a sailboat down there or a yacht, and it's just way down at the bottom of this cliff, and you see all the other islands around, that's when it really starts to resonate. But we will save that for next week.
Yeah, so dramatic. Make sure you're subscribed because you'll want to hear about it next week. And we, so the next day after Santorini, we came back to Paros.
Yes. Which was really funny, too, because we'd had an Airbnb in Paros, and on that same night, we were staying in Santorini at a different place, and I remember thinking, we're literally paying for two places at once.
Yeah, those kind of things, for whatever reason, sort of eat me alive inside when I know I'm paying for two things at once. But it was worth it. It was the right call. It was the right call for sure.
Yeah.
But we did come back to Paros the next day, fairly early in the day, and so we still had some time.
And I'd been wanting to lay out by the beach, and I was so glad to get a chance to do that. And so I just literally could just walk down to the beach. It was super calm little cove near the port with all these fishermen boats. And oh my goodness, it was it was just adorable. And I had this book that I'd found in the Airbnb, and it was called The Lizard. And I'm saying this, guys, because it's crazy. And I just loved it so much. And you can't buy a digital copy. You have to buy a hard copy on Amazon or something. But it's called The Lizard. It's by Dugald Bruce Lockhart. But the thing that's so fun about it is that I was reading it. And as I start reading it, I realize it's based on the island of Paros that we were on right then as I was reading it. And I was just totally consumed by it. It was scandalous, to say the least. I shared some stuff with Jamin. He was like, "What? You're crazy. That's a crazy book." But I liked it so much. I didn't get to finish it while we were there, but I left it for the next person and really regretted that. And I ended up buying it for myself when we got home, and I could have Amazon ship it to, I think, my mom's house at Christmas, I think is when I ended up getting it. So you're talking 6 months later, I finally got to finish the book.
Yeah, you were in pursuit of that story for a long time.
Yes, so much.
Well, and I do feel like Paros is the perfect kind of place to hang out on the beach. The beach was nice, super calm, and really just a great place to hang out. I remember several times just walking along the kind of the pier and the docks, and there would just be fishermen cleaning their nets, and they're just pulling out little pieces of fish and tossing them to the cats. You remember that?
Yeah, there were a lot of cats, weren't there?
Yeah, all these cats would just hang out and wait for the fishermen to clean their nets, and they would just toss some little chunks of fish, and the cats would scamper off with them and stuff like that. But just a sleepy little town, and we got to have dinner there our last night, and really kind of discovered a side of Paros really on the opposite side of the port from where we were, that had a lot more of the cyclotic homes and businesses. And there were a lot of those, these white buildings with these pink and purple flowers kind of everywhere, and just really pretty and quaint. And we got to sit there along the ocean and have some really good Italian food and watch the sunset. And I remember sitting there and watching these sailboats kind of go through the setting sun on our last night in Paros. And that is a really kind of standout memory for me of Paros. It's just such a relaxing, quiet place. And I remember thinking I could really come back here and stay a couple of weeks and be just super happy hanging out in just this sleepy little fishing town in the Greek islands.
Oh, I love that. I felt like I was the one that was happier there. So hearing you say that makes me I'm glad we're recording this so I can, really point back to your thoughts on that.
So you can
and
play it again
make sure
later.
we spend 2 weeks in Greece. It was everything you just said. It was everything you just said.
And there are so many little restaurants and stuff there. I feel like you could just kind of get lost there for a while.
I know. I can't believe we found that part of the village on the last night. I was like, what? This is incredible. It was just tons of little places to shop and eat. And it was all the white cycladic stuff. It was just so great. And it was almost a historic district, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Is what it felt like. And we found it on the last night. But I'm glad we found it.
Yeah, and we really only had the 2 nights that we were
True.
actually there.
Yeah.
It felt longer because we went on vacation from our vacation
to Santorini. Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend Paros. island hopping is not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
So whatever island you go to, plan on like staying there, but definitely throw Paros in the mix. I feel like Santorini and Mykonos get a lot of attention and get a lot of run, and rightfully so. They're really cool, and we'll talk about them. But Paros was one that I'm so glad we found. The Airbnb was amazing and really affordable, and the restaurants were really affordable, in sort of contrast to what you might get with Santorini and Mykonos.
Yeah.
And gave you that really Greek island feel in just a really cool way.
And I keep going back to how authentic it was.
Yeah.
Especially compared to Santorini, which is very posh,
and
Mykonos, which is very
touristy.
Fake almost.
Yeah.
In some ways, but we'll get to that when we talk about Mykonos. So next week is Santorini. Oh my goodness. It's so good, guys.
It is good. A really, really cool time.
Yeah. Short-lived, but lots to say and lots to see in the video next week. But this week's video, you guys, Paros, do not skimp on it. It is like, it's great. And so I can't wait to show off in the video all the things, including an early morning run that we got to go on and like see the fishermen at work and stuff. Like it was pretty great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. You're definitely going to want to go check that out on YouTube. You can also see other pieces of our time in Paros on social media. You can find us at all the places. Our handle is Travel FOMO Podcast. That is TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever's out there that's worth seeing, we're there.
That's right. You can also send us an email with your feedback or thoughts or your travel story. You can email us at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com. FOMO is FOMO. And we really love bringing you guys into the podcast whenever we can. So we know that you guys have your own travel stories. We want to hear them. You guys probably have some great thoughts on the Greek islands.
For sure.
I would love to hear those because we will definitely be going back and we can incorporate your thoughts and your feedback into that. So if by all means you just have tips for us, send it our way.
For sure.
Because we could really use it. Okay, couple ways you can do that. You can just open up an email, type up your thoughts to us, or you can actually create a voice memo. Say your thoughts into your phone, create a voice memo, attach it in your email, and it gets you a spot on the show. So with your permission, we'll consider that your permission and we'll share everything on the podcast. So, we want to hear from you guys. Don't hesitate to share your thoughts with us.
You can be our correspondent.
Exactly. Okay, guys, life is short.
Wander well.